For Sunday, July 10th, you have found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, a turnaround in Cobb County, a journalist is vindicated, and the latest governor deal trade mission. All these topics and more on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Good morning, I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And with us again today is Jennifer Hazelton. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
And of course, our regulars, Jeff Dickerson and Alexis Scott.
Yep.
Well, we talked about Cobb County and the SunTrust project with the new Braves Stadium last week, and we're going to top it again this week. But before we do want to offer condolences to those slain police officers in Dallas, and we'll be talking about the rash of shootings that has just gripped the country. I know Chris Wallace will be dealing with that, but if we have time, we'll do that at the end of the broadcast. But back to Cobb County, and the latest news, I'm going to go down the table and start with Alexis. It looks like the Cobb County Commission didn't really read what they voted last few months ago about the whole parking situation and denying parking to commercial enterprises and residences around a half-mile radius around that new stadium. Yeah,
it apparently they have thought better of it. As a result of saying that people cannot use their private property for parking for the Braves. And so they're going to revisit this and have a public hearing about it and try to sort it out. I think, I know Jeff talked about it last week, that this is sort of, you know, they've just sort of gotten themselves in a bind here, working with the Braves in a way that is letting the Braves take the lead on everything that they're doing, which is not necessarily in the public interest.
And Jeff?
Well, you know, we hit on this topic last week. I think that the Braves are putting their public sector partners in an untenable position. You know, they don't have any transparency requirements as a private organization, but the public sector governments with which they do business do. And that's the case with Cobb County. You can't go past this kind of ordinance that affects so many property owners in Cobb County without any public input. Now, you can if you're a private sector entity, but you can't if you're Cobb County government, and I think that that's the bind that they've caught themselves in.
It definitely looks like that the Braves have put Cobb County government in some kind of a choke collar, and they're now trying to walk away from that perception. I think the commission is really realizing that public perception of this whole deal is eroding very quickly, not in their favor, and so the move to talk about rewriting the ordinance is yet another attempt to try to walk back some of the damage. Whether or not they can do it fast enough before the people in the county really turn against this project, we'll see. I mean, the Cobb County taxpayers have $400 million of skin in this game, and then to be able to tell them that they can't sell their own parking space, it's just, the whole thing is just bad.
And I agree with what y'all are saying, and I'm going back to Augusta, where I lived for decades, and of course home of the Masters Golf Tournament. And you've had commercial businesses and residents there for years, all around the area. They make a little bit of money that first week of April. They look forward to it. It's great revenue. Everybody benefits. The Augusta National doesn't care.
Games.
You could go into Athens football games, and so I agree with you. And I think politically, let's talk about maybe the politics a minute, Alexis. Tim Lee, the Cobb County chairman, of course, is in a runoff with Mike Boyce. He's just shot himself in the foot again with this stupid ordinance that now they're backtracking on.
Yet again, and it's another issue to compound it is the bridge that they're building that's going across 285, which is like crazy. But I've been up there, and they are in fact building it because you can see it coming up out of the ground.
Well, just to interrupt a second, yes, this bridge you're talking about, it's being challenged
in court
legally, and so many people say, why are they going ahead with it? Jeff, have you followed this?
You know, yeah, I mean, just the whole thing. It's a matter, what it really breaks down to is a matter of transparency. It's just being open with the citizens out there. I know that they didn't have a referendum, and that has affected a lot of folks. You wanted to talk about the politics. I think that it's affected the politics, and that's why Mike Boyce is in this tight race with Tim Lee for chairman of Cobb County over these kinds of issues. Over whether the Braves come, no. over how it was done.
Yes,
it's all about
exactly.
how it was done.
Yep.
And then you go right back and without any public input, you do this parking ordinance. It's crazy. I
And
don't know what they're
then
thinking.
What's even funnier is then Lee, on the heels of all of this, throws out, a campaign promise of, well, let's cut property taxes. The good
Yes.
old tried and true before election, let's cut the property taxes.
And it just doesn't, it's not going to work. It looks like a ploy.
Well, that's right. There was another bit of news this past week in Atlanta, and of course we've talked about on this broadcast for decades about underground Atlanta and the ups and downs that it has had. But Alexis, there were some exciting plans that a developer unveiled this past week.
Right. I think it looks like the sale is finally going to go through. The city of Atlanta has done this swap of property with the state to make it more attractive. And it turns out that this developer has also bought about 15 other buildings along Peachtree Street south of the Five Points MARTA station, and has plans to do a high-rise, a hotel, grocery, and a whole lot of additional things that we hadn't considered before now. So it's an exciting prospect for downtown.
What, Jeff, did you see those plans?
Well, you look at, one of the things that I think can make this a lot more viable is that you've got this new generation of folks who are willing to move into areas like this. We've seen this happen in the old Fourth Ward and other areas of the Atlantic Station and other areas of the city. And so I see it as a little more viable. On top of that, of course, is the presence of Georgia State and the tens of thousands of students who are down there, and so I think that can make it a lot more viable. It would be great, I think, if we could reclaim the south side of downtown Atlanta, and hope this developer is successful in doing so.
I think, Reed's got the right idea by making this a private sector project. I think it's really encouraging that we're going to have this level of development downtown. The one thing that worries me is just the protection of some of these historic buildings, particularly on Alabama Street. We don't have a lot of our history left. It's not really clear if you look at the renderings, will those buildings be preserved? And I hope the city can do whatever it can to work with the developers to make sure that we try to protect our history as much as we can, what little is left. Unfortunately, Atlanta has a bad history of knocking down beautiful buildings and regretting it 20 years, 30 years later. We saw that with our old train station that was demolished in, the early 80s, I think. I have a feeling we're going to feel this way about Turner Field in 20 years when we realize that the Olympic history was, that came along with
I think they're going to preserve that through the Georgia State effort. But I also noticed in the report in the AJC on Friday that they had a bunch of architects going through those buildings and looking at some of the aesthetics of some of the original exteriors, and they're going to try to preserve some of that.
Well, what's not clear, though, is are they going to protect just the facades, or are they going to protect the buildings?
Right. Well, I think they're going to do what makes the most financial sense, is my guess.
Well, and that's a good point. The one caveat that we've talked about, we get excited, and rightly so, about a lot of the great things that have been happening in Atlanta over the last few years. We've all listed the roll call of the projects, everything from the Football Hall of Fame to you name it. But we've got to get control, as we talked about time and again, of policing and crime. And I'm hoping with the mayor's initiative last week that we're going to turn around a corner on that. But when we come back, we're going to talk about a judge who wanted some revenge against a journalist, but a journalist who was vindicated. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And there has been a saga that's been unfolding the last couple of weeks up in the Appalachian Circuit in North Georgia. And it involves a Superior Court judge named Brenda Weaver. And she, by her own admission, has initiated what to all accounts looks like revenge against a journalist who, horrors, said bad things about her in his newspaper. And she got her ally, the district attorney up there in Fannin County, to clap this attorney in jail and the journalist that he was representing. And they were strip searched, and all sorts of horrible things happened.
Drug tested?
Drug tested because they did an open records request. The soap opera continues here. They did an open records request on some court records, not to get too deep in the weeds. And then just before we tape, some good news for the journalist and the lawyer. They're vindicated. The judge said, oh, wait, maybe we should drop these charges. And then the DA dutifully says, oh, wait, maybe we should drop these charges. Which makes you wonder, you know, how solid were these charges to begin with if they felt so strongly? But let's go down the table again. Alexis, what a sorry, I mean, we're all have been journalists here. What is going on?
Yeah, it appears that the judge got a little too sensitive and overstepped her bounds there. The open request was to look at the operating budget of the judge and who was paying whom for what and using taxpayers' money for what. And the judge took offense and decided that he had misfiled the paper and charged him with fraud and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it had him arrested and put in jail, spent the night in jail and everything, and his attorney too, accused the attorney of fraud as well and filing under false pretenses, all kind of stuff. So I think with the hue and cry that followed, I think the judge saw the light, but it may be too late for that judge. The judge should be reprimanded, I think, and have her wrist slapped, if not more.
Well, Jeff, I'm sure several judges have wanted to jail you for what you've written over the years, but what do you think about all of this?
You know, these pesky reporters and these open records requests, I mean, you know, we should really change that law and there shouldn't be any open records. I mean, you know, it's crazy and you can't, yes, there should be sanctions for the judge. Judges are to enforce the law, and the law is that you have access to public records, including public records about your public office.
This whole thing plays out like an episode of the Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, this is what it sounds like. It sounds like Bo and Luke Duke going up against Boss Hogg. I mean, it's a small town skirmish that got blown out of proportion.
I don't think it got blown out of proportion.
I mean, by the judge, not by the media coverage.
Right.
But I mean, you know, the Society of Professional Journalists is filing a complaint against the judge to the Judicial Qualifications Committee.
Right.
Guess who's the chair of the commission?
The judge.
And guess who the district attorney is? She used to clerk for the judge, and she used to work for the judge's husband. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like
come on.
You can't make it up.
And I think you're right. It's going to end up being bad news for the judge, but this is sort of small town skirmishes going a little bit too far, and I think the judge is going to end up on the short end of this one.
Well, and to kind of have a footnote to all of this, this Judge Brenda Weaver needs to resign immediately as chairman, in my opinion, of the Judicial Qualifications Commission, because as you point out, they're supposed to be investigating her.
Right.
Yeah,
And also, this is
recuse
a problem. The JQC, as we speak, doesn't have an investigator, so they need to hire an investigator. The story goes on, and you wonder exactly what she was thinking, and because this damages the reputation of these two people. I mean, they've got felony charges against them, and they have to get that expunged. So
yeah, in fact, the attorney is pushing for a trial because he really wants to have his name cleared and to show that they weren't doing anything that they should not have been doing.
well, so much for, as you say, the Dukes of Hazzard latest comedy routine here. It's incredible.
Could be a screenplay.
You know, the Ku Klux Klan is a notorious racist organization, but they want to clean up the highway up in North Georgia, and which always
Take off those sheets and put 'em to work.
get a little work out of them. But you know, the state tried to stop them, but I have to say, there was a Superior Court judge, well, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Superior Court judge here in Fulton County that the Klan, just like I guess any other odious group, has the right to clean up a highway if they want to. Did you agree with that ruling?
Well, for the life of me, I cannot understand why the Klan is not on some terrorist list, that it should be banned from doing anything.
Well, I'd rather have them cleaning up than killing people, but
exactly.
But they do. It's a free speech. It's the right of.
Yeah, but they don't need to have any free speech because they only have hate speech, and they have a track record of killing people and terrorizing.
You know,
people.
that's a slippery slope that our legal community is wrestling with. When is hate speech not protected?
Speech. We're talking about action. The Klan.
Action. Now that's different from speech. Actions, you prosecute to the full extent of the law. Jeff, what did you think about this decision?
Well, you know, obviously it's been termed as a free speech case, and you talk about, you know, them cleaning up the highway. Actually, it's about a sign. It's about a sign that says that the Ku Klux Klan has adopted this highway. And that can be an embarrassing thing for the local Chamber of Commerce in this North Georgia County. And I think that that's why they wanted to stop this from happening.
Right, but you might not like it, I might not like it, but at the end of the day, you can't selectively enforce constitutional rights for some Americans and not for others.
No, I agree with that. But we're not talking about individuals, right? And that's really what the First Amendment applies to. And so, how about we have a sign that says that Al Qaeda has adopted this highway or ISIS has adopted this highway? I think that Alexis's point about it being a domestic terrorist organization is exactly right. And that's one of the things that we have to balance when we look at things like this. But it's a difficult case. I understand that they have a First Amendment right to go out and protest. They have a First Amendment right, obviously, to go out and clean up the highway and to have a sign that says that they've adopted this highway.
Well, let's very quickly talk about what our governor is going to be doing, and it has to do with promoting trade, and I think his administration has been marked by some great successes in this area. He's going to Germany, you may have seen, and of course it's very interesting. They're our largest importer from what I read, so I think we would all agree kudos and good success to our governor.
And isn't that interesting about globalization and how it's impacting our local economy? It's just an interesting conversation that needs to continue, because there's, on the one hand, you're talking about bringing jobs back and eliminating not imports and all this kind of stuff, but we have a global economy now, and we need to make sure that we're participating in it as the governor is doing.
We do, and to have smart trade deals, right, Alexis?
Yeah,
we also have our big global companies that want to do business in the world's largest consumer market, which is the United States.
Exactly.
And a lot of German companies, the quality demands of their products mean they need higher skilled workers, and that plays well into the United States' our manufacturing capabilities. The governor made some comments about maybe Brexit will be good for Georgia on the, before going to this. I think, while I think he may be proven right, I think it's a little too soon for talk like that. I think, going to Germany is good. The governor has had a lot of good success when he's gone on these missions, and hopefully he'll be able to bring some more jobs back to Georgia as a result.
Well, You've got the last word on that one. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the horrible spate of shootings that occurred this last week, and of course the tragedy of 5 police officers being killed in Dallas. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And I know that this will be all over the news shows this Sunday morning, but I think we all had to take a stab at it with regard to the terrible shootings that have gone on that are police related, and then the news from Dallas just from a couple days ago of the killings of police officers. Just a couple thoughts from me, and I'm going to go right down the table because I know we all want to delve into this a little bit. I thought that Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed had a good statement the other day when he talked about what his father once told him in dealing with the police, and my parents once told me this, and I'd like to hear if yours did too, but that is, obey a police officer, whether you think he's right or wrong, and be respectful. And whether we like it or not, for civilization's sake, this thin blue line is all we have of police with regard to having a civilized society or not. Alexis, your thoughts on the events?
The whole week has just been one tragic event after the other. And it is a terrible thing to see the division or the sense that the police occupy rather than protect and serve. And there is that feeling there, and there is that perception, and some of it is being borne out now with these videos of what's happening. I think there have been 13 police-related shootings in Georgia since the beginning of this year, and none of those cases have been disposed yet. Some charges are pending, some have been dismissed. So it's just a tragic thing. And then to have that followed by the incident in Dallas where you had a sniper specifically targeting police is just more horrific. And it reminds me of an expression that Andy Young uses from time to time when he says, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth will only leave everybody blind and toothless. There's no solution to this, and hate, you can't fight hate with hate.
Jeff, are there solutions to this?
I don't know. You're going to have to ask your friends at the NRA. I mean, everybody's armed. Everybody's got a gun, and that's what we see. And you know, black men feel like they're under siege. I had to sit my sons down the other day and say, here's what happens when you get pulled over, and you always have to show your hands, and you always have to do this, and you always have to do that. But these folks are just too quick to murder someone.
Are you talking about all police officers?
I'm talking about the people who were involved in these shootings. When you've got a man on the ground, I don't think that you need to shoot him point blank in the chest. He is obviously subdued. And when you pull somebody over because they've got a missing tail light or a broken tail light, I don't see how that translates into 4 shots in the chest. I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. They should have rubber bullets. They've got tasers. They have other methods available to them, or should have other methods available to them than murder because you have a broken taillight. That to me makes no sense.
This is why let's get Jennifer involved in this conversation. What are your thoughts, Jennifer?
In Louisiana, the policeman had 4 charges against him of complaint.
Well, that's where we have a legal system that sorts this out. I think this rush to judgment by people on all sides is very dangerous. Let's get Jennifer in this conversation.
It's heartbreaking, you know, and we're in danger of getting to the point where we've got to think long and hard about the long term here. Are we going to alienate police so much to the point where they're not willing to go into the bad neighborhoods? They're not willing to try to fight crime. They're not willing to put their lives on the line because they feel like their lives are in jeopardy in a way that they haven't been before. This is a very unsettling trend. Unfortunately, I don't think our president has done a lot to help this situation. I think he likes to lecture us. He likes to jump in and take sides before all the facts are known. We saw that with him at Ferguson. We saw that with him with the Professor Gates situation. He gave us another lecture this week about you know, who we are as Americans. I don't think that's constructive. I think so far in Atlanta, luckily our police have continued to do a good job, and they seem to be acting with honor, so we can all take some solace in our police department here. But I think we've got a cultural issue here that we need to start tackling head on, and I don't think gun control is going to be the answer because, again, these aren't licensed gun owners.
We don't know that either.
Well, the police are licensed gun owners.
Right.
Man, they you know, they've got a badge and a gun. You know, I don't really know that we have any answers to this. We obviously need some real sensitivity training with people who are out there.
I think it's keeping the lines of
who are out there
communication
patrolling
open.
our streets.
It's keeping the lines of communication open between the communities, especially communities of color,
in Dallas,
and the police.
The chief of police, David Brown, there said that they have that, and the police were actually posing with demonstrators prior to this shooting happening. They have a good community police
That's true,
program.
but when you have demonstrators talking
But
about hate
I'm just
speech, saying blank the police and kill the police, that is pretty corrosive.
Pigs, calling them pigs.
That's very
You know,
corrosive.
you've been calling them pigs for a long time because of the way that they've done policing. I mean, I'm from Detroit. I remember the Big Four going through terrorizing black neighborhoods with 4 white police officers in a car. That's how I grew up. That was my experience.
Well, Jeff,
okay, but here's the thing. Here's the last point that I want to make about this. This is not new.
Right.
And probably, even though we see this spate and we think it's a trend, the trend is going downward. And the reason that the trend is going downward, we're not seeing as many of these, is everybody's got a video camera. In other words, this has been happening in this nation for decades.
You're right, Jeff. But
there's been this war on black men in communities like this, and nobody's ever seen it. And now you see it. It's in full relief.
We got to get out. We got to get out. Jeff has the last word on that. When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. Jennifer, let's start with you on winners and losers.
Okay, my winner is South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, who in 5 minutes basically eviscerated Hillary Clinton's lies and exposed them to the American public, and also did a good job challenging FBI Director James Comey on trying to get him to explain why intent would be a reason not to move forward with an indictment when intent is not in the statute. My losers are Hillary Clinton for getting caught lying to the American public more times than we can care to count. I think we deserve better as Americans when we're looking to elect our next commander-in-chief. We deserve someone who will be honest with us and will know how to handle classified information. And then also my loser is James Comey for making what looks like a purely political decision regarding the Hillary Clinton email scandal.
Jeffrey?
Diamond Reynolds, she was the woman who videotaped the murder of Philando Castile outside of St. Paul, Minnesota. The calm and grace with which she did so was astounding. If you haven't seen the video, you should. And
Jeff,
the other winner
is get Alexis in.
The other winner is Mark Dayton, the governor of Minnesota, who asked the question: if these people had been white, what would be the response?
Alexis?
All right, I'm going to go back and recognize Chief David Brown, the police chief in Dallas. He has been an eloquent spokesman, calm under fire. The AKAs are in Atlanta, 25,000 strong this week. And Jimmy and Rosalind Carter celebrating 70 years of marriage.
That's great.
Wow.
Well, that's it for the Georgia Gang this week. Come back to us next week.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.